Welcome to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast, your destination for all things lacrosse. I'm your host, Kyle Devitt. This is Owen Hart.
Yeah, I don't know if this is happening before or after the previous podcast, but I may or may not be fired by now, so we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, you have to be hired to be fired, but we're trying it out.
Good point.
You did great. I loved it. Great energy. It's nice to have someone made less than me on the podcast, I guess. Then I can just take the brunt of everything. So that'll be fun.
That's very fair.
Yeah. We got a great show for you guys today. Our guest is the other Hopkinton head coach, Dan Norton. What's up, man? How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah. I was talking to Owen about maybe doing this and coming in studio and helping out. And he's like, hey, I know, like, is it weird to have a Hopkinton guy on if you're the Hopkinton guy? I'm like, I don't care. That'd be great. Does he want to come on? Like, Hopkinton's a great school down in Mass. There's a reason we get mistaken for them all the time. And it's not just because of our color scheme, which is exactly the same, except for you have orange. And I'm glad you wore something with orange. So that's great.
I was saying this is going to be the only time I think I know a guest better than you do if this ever happens. I feel like even when you have Jack on, you might have had a better relationship with those guys. I think this is going to be the only time that this happens.
Oh, there was plenty of times where Jack knew him better. Trust me.
Yeah.
I just ask questions.
Yeah.
That's kind of, I'm the dancing monkey no matter what. So it doesn't really matter. Coach, where to start with you? Let's talk about, obviously you're a Springfield guy, which I forgot before we fired the podcast up and had some fun choice words before we started recording. But give me a little bit of your background and how you ended up there and then kind of how you transitioned into being a head coach at Hopkinton.
Yeah. So I grew up in Ashland, Mass, played there for 4 years. Started with the youth program. Youth program was young when I was growing up, kind of in the area. There's obviously like the Sudburys and the older programs, but in the TVL specifically, it was kind of growing at the time. So hopped into it. My older brother played, luckily, so therefore I did. He needed someone to play catch with. So then played in high school and then went on to Springfield College. From there, got a phys ed degree, started teaching in Hopkinton at the elementary school, and then was hired at Ashland, actually my alma mater, for a few years to be the head coach. And then the Hopkinton job opened up in 2014 and came over here.
So you've been coaching for 10 years at the same school?
Yeah. Or actually, I'm sorry. It became open in 2014. My first season was 2015. So. All
right. Well, you're going into your 10th season then. So that's still pretty impressive, having that longevity at a public school program that maybe, you grew up next to it, but maybe weren't in that same town. I think we see a lot of coaches just stay. And I like that. I don't think that's bad at all. I think giving back is part of being a coach, especially if, listen, I'm not the coach at my alma mater, but I'm a coach at a school that was a mile away. In New Hampshire, that's rare because everything's 10 miles away from each other. And it's great. I think that's very admirable. And how, going into being a head coach, how did you approach it? What was kind of some of your earlier years compared to what you do now in terms of preseason, scheduling, how you run the team, things like that?
Yeah, I think good question. Early on, I got hired at 23. So, as a 23-year-old, I said I was ready, but looking back, I was not ready. Obviously with the X's and O's, that's one thing, but, just dealing with everything, from the youth program to the, dealing with parents to, the in-school type of stuff. So I think over the years, just trying to learn from other coaches as much as possible. And still, I think, the day you stop trying to learn, is the day that you're probably should stop coaching. So, hopefully 5 years from now, I'm a different coach than I am now. And, I think just with different people from different sports, the community that we have, in our state with, a couple people come to mind, Dave Wainwright's a huge mentor of mine from Needham. And then just other coaches throughout the school district that you can kind of pick your brain on. I think that's a huge part of it, part of growing as a coach.
I was 23 when I started head coaching at junior varsity. I can't imagine being that old as a varsity coach, let alone a program that has decently high expectations like Hopkinton. Which is like one of the things I found out when I started coaching is that my ideas were too big and I was thinking too much ahead. And then we get on the field and we can't pass and catch, and you have to kind of go back to square one. Just again, kind of how did you deal with the adjustment from going from just playing recently out of college to now you're the coach? What was that learning curve like? Did you have a lot of like adjustment of like, I got to really start like teaching and learning and not just I was a good player, so I can be a good coach?
Yeah, I think that's where, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, I think, those first couple of years, I was like, oh, we'll do X, Y, and Z because that's fresh in my memory. But, you're forgetting that where you were as a, 14, 15, 16-year-old kid. And, kind of, working backwards from a skill, I think is a huge, skill to have as a coach. Luckily I'm a teacher. So a lot of the things I do with the elementary students kind of, I find myself doing a lot of that same stuff with the older guys, because it really doesn't go away no matter what, talent level they may have, it's still always, coming back to the basics and honing in on those fundamentals.
Oh, did you ever try to be a teacher at all or a sub or anything?
No. I knew that I wasn't made out to be a teacher when I would do basketball clinics in the summer for my high school, and I just couldn't deal with the kids. I just like at ages 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, I was just like, I can't do this. I mean, granted, I was a lot younger back then, but I think that was my start and end of being an educational person. I'm going to do my best to not make this podcast the Chris Farley show and just play Remember When with Coach Norton, because I've seen more of his games than any other team in the world that isn't named Westwood. So I'm going to try my best not to be like, when he went there, like, what were you thinking in this exact play? Because I could do that for 40 games of his, and I'm going to do my best not to do that. I just want to say that up front, but it's going to be hard. Yeah,
no, I asked you that because like the reason I'm not a teacher, even though I was like an English major, and it's like a natural path for a lot of people, right?
Yep.
I was a full-time sub at a high school in New Hampshire, my first year coaching when I was at Plymouth State. And I had a kid, I was teaching a typing class because you just do whatever. And I'm in the typing class at this school. I'm not even gonna say what school it is. And he didn't want to do it. And I was like, okay, I didn't know what to do. So I've never had a kid be like, yeah, I don't want to do any of this. And I'm like, okay, can you like sit quietly? Like, what do I didn't know what to do. And he's just like, well, I'm out of here. And I'm like, okay, well, you can go to the office on your way out. Like, I don't want to deal with you. Right. And he walked threateningly behind me in my head. I'm also one of those like really paranoid short people that has to see the door. And he was behind me and I popped way too quickly and turned. And he was like, whoa. And I was like, sorry. Yeah, go to the office. And the whole class was like, oh, you're going to fight him. Oh, Coach Devin, you're going to fight him. And I'm like, no, that was a bad reaction. I literally went into the principal's office and I was like, hey, this happened. What do I do? And he's like, what were you going to do? I was like, I don't know. I thought he was going to hit me. And he's like, well, if he hit you, what do you do? I'm like, hit him back? And he's like, no, you can't hit. And I was like, okay, I quit. Literally just called and was like, I can't handle this. I was too young. That's really what it was. It wasn't that like I would never do that now. That was a very long time ago. But reliving that, and then like I see teachers now and I'm just like, you're saints. All of you saints walking among us. Angels walk among us and they are teachers. Like it is incredible. And my follow-up for that, what made you want to be a teacher?
My mother was a teacher and, just had a bunch of impactful coaches in high school. I always knew I wanted to coach. And, full disclosure, my mother was an English teacher. So grew up seeing her with a, stack on her lap like that, grading at home. And I always loved sports and, wanted the ability to, have an impact on all the kids in the school. So, when I was deciding on schools, it was schools that had phys ed programs and, naturally, Springfield has a great one. So that kind of led me into, teaching and coaching. So yeah, I'm very lucky, but my guys joke all the time too. Everyone like I work at an elementary school and I'm actually in the school now. You might've heard the bell a minute ago, but we do like a first grade lacrosse program on Wednesdays. And two of my captains were in here yesterday and they're like, oh, coach, I get it why you're in a bad mood at practice sometimes. I'm like, yep. So, they're cute. They're awesome. But sometimes it's, they're in general awesome, but sometimes it gets your patience.
Do you have like a teacher switch and a coach switch? You have to flip a lot of the times. It's like you can't really yell at the first grader and go have them to go take a lap, and you can't really be too soft on the high schoolers. Like, how do you? Where's the balance there?
Sometimes I slip. Sometimes, I'll
Yeah.
call a huddle at practice and be like, all right, boys and girls, you know what I mean? So, sometimes I catch myself, but it makes for a good day. I mean, some people, a lot of coaches, work, in a high school. So they're kind of dealing with the same kids all day. I think, for my situation, I'm at a kindergarten and first grade school. So it's like two separate jobs, like my 2-minute ride over to the high school is like a shift. And it's like, one day, one job ends, the other job begins. So, I kind of like that aspect of it.
I need that. So like
Switch?
I need time for the switch. It's more like a dial that gets slowly turned as I'm driving. And then like, hopefully when I arrive at the gates, it's like, okay, we're good. And I didn't realize that because I would go from, talking or breaking down a game. This is mostly my life in season is I watch games constantly that aren't mine. So I'm watching college prep, high school. I'm looking at clips. I'm writing at the same time. And then like, I'm like, oh yeah, like 20 minutes before I have to leave, I'm like, oh, what are we doing today? Probably should write up that program. Like, what am I doing with the Javes today? Like, what am I doing with the offense? And then I kind of have to just do this and go. Because if I don't do that, I'm literally thinking about like, oh man, what about that like pass down, pick down, long stick skip goal that Virginia just did? Like my brain doesn't shut off like that. And it was funny. Like I know that the season is far away right now. We're recording this in November, but I still have like nightmares about lacrosse a little bit where like I had one the other day, and I don't know if anyone listening to this is going to know this reference. I don't think you will. I was in the dream and I was getting yelled at by Captain Sandy from Below Deck's Bravo show about my team's shot percentage. And then I snapped up and I woke up and my girlfriend's like, what's wrong with you? And I was just like, oh, Captain Sandy was yelling at me. This is shot percentage. And I go back to sleep and she's like, it's not even the season. What's wrong with you? And I'm like, you can't turn it off sometimes. And it's a great question. That was a great question. Like the switch and the dial and like the time you need to switch out. I mean, even going from kids to high school, that's got to be a real adjustment. And do you think that's affected your coaching style?
I think in a way, yeah, because it's, I think it's helped me, kind of get back to the roots, for the older kids. Coaching doesn't really, impact my teaching necessarily, but the other way around, I think, my teaching and impacting the coaching with, sometimes, not that we have a huge program, not saying that we have, thousands of people at our games, but it's cool to see, remind you why you're actually doing it. You got these kids that are coming over asking for autographs from the older guys, and it kind of puts everything back in perspective. Sometimes you might have a tough loss or crazy situation in a game or something like that, and then the next day that some of the kids that went to the game are talking about it, and they don't even know who won or lost or whether that kid's shot went in. They just think it's so cool looking up at the big kids.
Just going off of last season, you guys had one of your best seasons in recent history of 14 wins, I forget what it was, and then a good playoff win at home. Just talk about how that season went. What were your expectations going into the season? If you're going to have that kind of success, just like, and how it went, ebbs and flows throughout the year of like when you kind of really started to gel throughout the year.
Yeah, I think, it started with, we had great senior leadership. Our captains last year were awesome. I think, the compete level for, obviously as a coach, you're trying to design practices that, get everyone's juices going. Last year was one of those years we could have been, our stretch lines were competing to be who could be the loudest, because of the seniors we had. Luckily we had, a couple of years ago, it was tough because we had, these kids playing, a little early than we would have liked to, because some of the classes ahead of them had good players, but smaller classes since COVID. So we kind of, we had high expectations last year, and our senior leaders really just hit it out of the park. I think, kind of, as our league's got some, great teams, and just, I think the biggest thing for us last year was just, how we competed even in our preseason scrimmages, how we competed in, the smallest little drills that normally sometimes you're trying to light a fire under their butts to get going. But, the group that we had last year, I think will leave a lasting legacy on our program, just the way they attacked practice every day. It was really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you said you had a loaded senior class, obviously led by Logan in the offense. Just how do you balance both maximizing your older players, but still getting production out of your youth, and not just make sure that it's just, hey, the seniors real good, I'm gonna give them the ball, get out of the way, but also making sure that these young guys are still ready once their number's called that later that season or even later the years? Like, how do you kind of balance those two things?
Yeah, I think, first and foremost, he was a special kid because, he'd rather, he had a ton of points, but, he'd rather be getting the assist. So, just in practice, sometimes we just, not have him in and just run our offense. I think where it's really going to, we had, some good, secondary pieces last year that we're expecting to be bigger pieces on the offensive side. Defensively, losing we lost those two, big polls we had, and another kid actually went to private school. So, that's kind of like we weren't really planning on that one loss, but, I don't know if I'm telling you too much, Owen, but
Yeah,
we'll find out before. So we'll be a little bit young on the back end, but, again, similar to where we were a few years ago, some guys that, might not necessarily be, maybe a year away, throw them into the fire, and that's the best way to get better.
Before we hopped on, Z, who we all know very well, did text me. He's like, "Get as much out of Dan as you possibly can." I could verbatim. That's what he told me. So,
I actually believe you. I don't even think that's like a bit.
No, not a bit.
Yeah, I totally believe that. Who, by the way,
text. Yeah,
Z still texts me anytime I talk about my knee, and he's like, "All right, what are you doing for it? What's the next step?
Yeah.
When are you gonna start playing?" And I'm like, "Dude, I don't know. I played in my girlfriend's kids' parents game, and I felt a tweak, so I stopped. Z, leave me alone." It's great. You have guys like that. They kind of keep you in check and keep you hungry for that kind of stuff. One of the fascinating things about covering high school lacrosse in Massachusetts is it's so big. Why? It's insane. You have 4 divisions.
Yep.
And all the divisions have divisions in them. Great idea, guys. When you started coaching to now, how much difference in turnover have you seen, and how has that affected your coaching experience?
Yeah, I think, you just mentioned Z right there. It's, he's been in the league longer than I have. So it's always nice to, he's one of my great friends off the field too. Him along with John Isef have been there forever. Amongst our league, hasn't been a ton of turnover lately. I mean, obviously Brian McLaughlin retiring is going to be, he started the program when I was playing. He was the coach, so it's going to be weird looking at the Dover Sherburne sidelines without him. Bill Graham's at Ashland. I played for him. Throughout our league, I think there's not a ton of turnover. There obviously has been, but it's we got a great group of coaches that, everyone's competing to, beat each other, but then, shaking hands, catching up before and after the game. So I think we got a unique situation. Can't speak for every league in that regard, but I think, just the landscape of the state too. I mean, I don't know if you remember, Owen, not that it was long ago, but, those sections, and now it's pretty cool. You get, first round for us last year, we're playing Minichog, who we played during the regular season, but that's a long distance for a first round game. Then we're down to Hingham, and you know what I mean. So it's kind of cool to see some different teams from, now that it's a statewide tournament rather than the sections where for a few years we were seeing the same teams all the time. So.
Yep, and there were always league teams too. Like enough.
Exactly.
I mean, you guys, it's a small where you are, so you're playing the same 4 teams every year. But it was like,
oh, dude,
with the size of Mass, you'd play your league schedule, and then in the playoffs, you'd either see Medfield or Hopkinton, and that was the second round, and that was just year after year until 2022.
Well, I tell you, I ruined that for us. One of my first years coaching, especially for JV, we went and played a prep school JV team, and it didn't go how you think. We smashed them so much that they don't ever want to play us now. And it was, I only had brought 2 juniors. I'm sorry. I didn't know that not all prep school JV teams are like nasty. I just figured like, oh, it's a prep school, it's a huge. I got the kids so fired up. I was like, we're getting dressed on the bus. We're not saying anything. We're walking out there like one line. They're like, are you sure? And I was like, yes, we have to be at our best. And then like we were, and I was not prepared for like what we saw and what happened. And my AD was like furious with me. He's like, what are you doing? And I was like, I didn't know. I just thought it's a prep school. They're gonna be so good. And then, you know, when they weren't, I was like, oh no, have I ruined that for everyone? And he was like, yes. And I was like, oh, sorry. Like the scale of stuff is so fascinating to me as a coach and someone that covers it, because you'd think is like, my rule is, and I've talked to Owen about this, is I don't think it's journalistically responsible to cover my division in NHIA. So I don't. So when we do the write-ups, like I don't do them purposefully. I will give information like scores and all that, and I'll have someone else do it. Sometimes it's Mike, sometimes it's, you know, Phil Shore will come in and do it. But I feel great doing D2 and D1 in New Hampshire. I don't care. I know all of you too. But it's that separation is, and I think you're kind of dealing with this on a different, in the same, actually kind of the same way, where you're like, I was like, yeah, I would love your thoughts on all of Division II in Massachusetts. However, I don't think like you should be writing that, even though everyone listening to this is probably like, well, you should be, right? Because you know more. And it's like, I don't want to put my kids in a position where like I write something that gets said against them on the field or used against them or anything. I would never do that. Like to me, the covenant of being their coach is much more sacred than like a 250 word blurb that I'm writing with, like, you know, even if it's neutral, I can't guarantee that I won't say something I'm not supposed to say. If you listen to this podcast, I literally say something I'm not supposed to say every podcast. It's literally what we do here.
Yep. Set your watch.
That's why you're here.
Set your watch to it.
Yeah. I brought you in so I would do it less. I don't know if it's working yet, but we'll see. And again, searching for the question in there. It's kind of like, what is that? Is that a reference I don't get?
Yes, apparently so. It's the cuckoo sound when you say something inappropriate on a game show. They do that. Wait.
What's a game show?
Oh my God.
That was my Gen Z moment for our producer, folks. That was yes.
I'll see myself up.
Yeah. We'll see you later.
Hey, it's Bobby Moran, Director of Athletics at Thayer Academy. You know what? Experience matters, and Thayer Academy's professional coaching staff understands how to work with each student athlete to help them succeed. Our coaches and faculty are committed to ensuring both 5th to 12th graders feel known, connected, and prepared. This is Thayer's secret sauce, nurturing each student to reach their full potential. Here, success is truly a team sport. Are you ready for your child to take the next step? See what Thayer has to offer at thayer.org. That's THAYER.org.
Are you serious about playing your sport in college? Do you need a flexible education that allows you to maintain your practice and competition schedules while also preparing you to succeed at the next level? You should check out the University of Nebraska High School. UNHS is accredited and offers more than 100 online courses, including NCAA-approved courses to protect your academic eligibility. Students can earn a UNHS diploma or take a single course for transfer credit. Courses are college prep, self-paced, and available 24/7, 365. Enroll anytime and take up to a year to complete a course. Visit highschool.nebraska.edu today.
Going forward and like talking about your team, let me ask you this then. When you talk to media, how different is it from when you talk to coaches? Because I'm going to ask you that, and then I'm going to ask you that, because I think it's a two-part answer.
Yes.
Because you're both,
Him first.
and you're a coach.
Him
You
first.
go first.
Yeah, talking to media, it's always, it's usually trying to avoid like the bulletin board stuff, obviously, and trying to keep it more, just general, about the process and how the kids work. And I think that's similar to what we say to, the coaches in the league. First time around might not say as much, you know what I mean? Second time around, it's like, I know you've seen us play 3 times, you know what I mean? Our games are on YouTube, you know what I mean? Like I've seen your team, you know? So it's kind of, you know, comical sometimes, you know what I mean? People trying to sandbag and stuff like that, and you know, little gamesmanship in there. But you know, I think yeah, with the media, it's, you know, it's usually, you know, just, I guess, you know, trying to build the guys up, and, you know, but not, you know, say too much about anybody else.
I'll say that I've never had to be assigned to cover one of your games. I have had to cover a lot of Medfield games. I'll say that. And I didn't get the impression that John was the most happy that I was the one covering it. I'm cool with him now, but he sports the. But the thing I'll always say about whenever I try to toe that line of whenever I'm like, talking to a coach and I tell him that I'm also a coach and I do media as well, is like, I want my job is I want to have more kids pick up lacrosse sticks as much as possible. Like, I wasn't a lacrosse player. I started my senior year. I just showed up, and that was mainly because of Mike Flanagan, who I'm sure we all know pretty well. Did highlight tapes for Westwood Lacrosse a lot of times. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. I'm going to join this community. And through what Mike did, I started doing what he did as well through media. I picked up a stick, and now I'm a coach, now media, and I'm just trying to just make sure, even if one more kid picks up a stick, I did my job. And that's what I kind of try to tell all the coaches who maybe aren't the most thrilled that I'm in media and in coaching, that's kind of what my ultimate goal is, that I just want to spread the advocacy for the sport and just grow the game as much as possible. And some people, I mean, rightfully so. I mean, like I was talking about it, I interviewed the CM coach at their game 2 days, like a week before I was going to play CM, and he didn't care at all. But it's a caveat I have to add a little bit.
Yeah, it's different. Again, it's why I don't do it. Like I try to draw the line. For you, it's harder because you coach like in a team that people want to read about, in a league that people want to read about. You coach at a place where people want to read about. That's why everyone confuses you guys for us, for you guys, not you guys for us ever. Like it's literally like
I get tagged in your stuff a lot. It's funny.
It is, and it's cool. Like I don't have any animosity to it. I think like everyone says, oh, Massachusetts, and I go, no. And they're like, where is that in New Hampshire? And I'm like, it's the smallest school in the state. And they're like, oh, cool. How are you guys? I'm like, we're pretty good. You know, like it's literally like such awkward conversations with people. Whereas like, if I'm like, if I tell that same person I work in lacrosse media, if they don't have an interest in lacrosse, they literally are just like, oh, that's a job. And I'm like, for some of us, you know, like it's like, it's kind of sad. But given, and one of the things that this job has given me a great appreciation of is the vast network of Massachusetts coaches, and like how much people care about what they're doing. Because one of the reasons I became a coach, not a writer, is because I didn't have a good coach. And I was like, well, I have to give them the thing that I didn't have. That's what I want to do. And that was very misguided in how I did that early on in my coaching career in college, because like you can't do that in college. Like you have to get a little younger, a little more granular with kids. And, you know, I think I should have been a high school coach all along. I know you're a teacher, and that's kind of where you settled into it, but have you thought about how different it would be if you were a college coach or coaching at a different level or age group?
Yeah, I think, well, I mean, different age groups, it's, you know, I'm lucky where, you know, smaller town, you know what I mean? So I'm involved in all the youth programs too. And, you know, coached one of the youth teams last year too, which was a lot of fun. It was kind of a breath of fresh air from, you know what I mean? I shouldn't say that, but, you know, a different, you know, vibe, and, you know, kind of put things in perspective. Yeah, I've thought about that. I mean, I think like, you know, I have a lot of buddies that, you know, naturally the you know, Springfield Mafia, there's a ton of them, you know, so, yeah, I think it brings I like the stability of, you know, teaching and coaching in the same school, you know, living close to my work, and, you know, being able to be, you know, as invested in the community as I can. You know, it's something I've thought about, you know, but I'm happy where I am. And you know, interestingly, right outside of, as I got out of school, you know, that was something that crossed my mind. You know, do I go that grad assistant route, you know, get my master's? And, you know, I was lucky enough to, you know, get a job in a good district as a teacher, you know, so I didn't really want to pass up that opportunity. So, you know, I'm glad that with the decision I made, but, you know, I do think about it often, you know, where might I have been if I, you know, took a grad assistant job right out of school, and, you know, kind of probably would have ended up doing exactly what I'm doing now, but, might have taken a little longer to get there.
You mentioned the youth program and like the work you do with that, and a couple minutes ago mentioned losing a kid to private school. How much are you involved with getting your high school guys working with the youth team or getting the youth program to watch you guys get like, I don't want to get in trouble for lack of a better word. Like we often recruit just as much as the private schools. We're trying to recruit our kids to come to our own high school and not leave. So just what has been your process with that, or just what has been kind of your history with kind of getting those two things blended together and incorporated?
Yeah, I think, the nature of, I wish, full disclosure, I wish we could play more night games. There's another team in our league that there's a million kids at every game they play,
Yes, there is.
That's something that I wish we could have, because I think that's a huge way to build it naturally. But one thing that we do this little like mentorship program. So once teams are set, varsity members are assigned to a certain youth team, and they have to, hit, at a minimum, an hour a week, whether it's one of their practices or a game. And it's cool because you can kind of, the kids kind of have like a draft on where they want to be. There's a little kid in my neighborhood that I want to be on his team, whatever it may be, or younger brothers or whatever it may be. So we've had a lot of success with that, assigning them to a certain youth coach. The youth coaches do an awesome job. But, it's especially with those younger teams that helps them, able to do stations and things like that. Or maybe, maybe the person who's volunteering to coach never had any playing experience, which is, totally awesome. They're volunteering. So it kind of helps, we've seen the results of that the past couple of years. So
Public schools, if you're not doing that, start. Then I'm going to give a call to action right now. Just please.
Yeah, we actually, I was lucky when I joined Hopkinton. They already had that kind of tradition of like meeting with the youth program and like knowing what they're doing. And they always practice after us, which is like not great because at the end of practice, I'm at my wit's end sometimes because we're always doing, I don't know what you guys do to end your practices. We always end with like man up, man down, or like a very specific thing we need to get right for the next game. And inevitably, like there's going to be one practice where like I say and do things that aren't really great. And my volume is very high. And I've done that. And the Hopkinton parents like don't really react. Like like when I was a college coach, parents would be like, oh my God, that guy's crazy. But like the Hopkinton parents are like, cool. Yeah. No, I see. Yeah. They like walk away. The kids are just like, aren't even phased. And I'm like, all right, maybe this is going to work. Like maybe this works, but it doesn't always work out that way. And I think one of the things that there is a disconnect in my community that's because it's much smaller is the percentage of kids that play club. And I know you're involved with 495 and bringing that club. It's fairly new club for your region. Can you talk a little bit about that and how that came about?
Yeah, so partnered with Tom O'Rourke, who used to run the Franklin Youth Lacrosse program. Great guy, got to know him, over the past couple of years, and simply put, we just decided to throw our hat in the ring and see if we could provide value for the kids in this area and try to get something going. 495 area, it's pretty we practices are from Marlboro all the way down to Taunton. So it's kind of everywhere in between that. Just trying to provide another option for the kids to play. And we're having a ton of fun doing it. We've got some both of our alums, helping coach and a lot of the get to meet some new kids from Franklin and, Holliston and some other towns that normally don't get to work with. So it's been a ton of fun.
And a Clark player. Which makes me happy. Kyle Palmieri. Yeah. I did a little research.
Nice.
I'm always happy to see a Clark kid try to coach.
Proud of you.
There's like, two of them. So it's like me and that. Yes. Yes, I believe. No. It's I always make fun of it. And especially if I'm talking to a Springfield guy, it's like, oh, Clark. Yeah. I remember getting beat 25-3-2. Okay. I was the 3. I remember. It was tough. But the Springfield guys have actually been really gracious and they take it as much as they give it, which is what, I'll give them credit for that. And I learned that from a great Springfield grad, Jack Patelli. So, in terms of the club program, I know it's like kind of not everything we want to focus on here, but like, I'm always curious when coaches get super involved with that and why and the reasoning. And usually the reasoning is, well, I wanted a place for my kids to play, which is like, if I wasn't doing this job and I could just go start a club team where my kids could play and it could just be my kids, that'd be great. I can't do that. It's way too small. It wouldn't be feasible. We don't have the talent level, all that stuff. There's a million reasons why I couldn't do it. And that deters most people, but it didn't deter you. And I'm curious why that is. I want to really dig into that and see how you push through that and decide to make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I've coached for many different clubs. It's part of my makeup is just coaching. So, working for other people, finally, met Tom, and, we were both like, I think we could do this on our own. And, it was a risk. And, first year, yeah, we had some, it was smaller, and, we want to remain, a smaller, more, intimate club that, gets, tons of practice time and things like that. But yeah, within the first year, we doubled in size. The feedback's been great from the parents. It's been a ton of fun, doing, local tournaments and things like that. But, I think with the winter coming up, that's, a huge area where, we get a ton of reps is, 30 plus hours of indoor training for us, as a club. So, yeah, selfishly, there's, and obviously you got to be careful, you know what I mean? There's a couple teams that I can't necessarily go around because I get too many guys from my town. So, that's something that's coming down the pipeline. I think there was just something recently from Matty Feld on Twitter, kind of about that. But, this fall anyways, was working more with the youth kids and, I had a ton of fun doing it.
I think the loophole for you and me with something like this is like, we can coach kids. And I've done that. I don't work for any club team. I don't have any affiliation with any club team, but like, I have coached little kids. Like if you want to get mad at me for like bias or whatever, like, oh, I coached club team kids that were 9 or 8, like, go ahead. I just think like everyone's so sensitive about it. It's so crazy. Like, one of the things I said in a previous podcast that we may or may not have just finished before this one, is that the real problem with a lot of the development is that like there aren't enough experienced coaches. And I know it's not so much the problem in Massachusetts. It's definitely the problem where I'm from. It's a problem in Maine. It's a problem in Vermont. It's a problem in parts of Rhode Island. It's really not a problem in Connecticut or Massachusetts. There's just so many people. But I think that that's something that we need to work on as like a group of people that like cover the sport, love the sport, coach in the sport. Like, why are you upset that someone's trying to help someone else? To me, that never made any sense. And it, as someone that works in media, like, I can see why you would think I would have a bias or something. But like, if you think I have a bias because I coach like youth kids and I get like $100, that's crazy. It's literally crazy. Cause I'm probably just going to do it again and then not tell anyone. I mean, this is the first time I've talked about it. I don't care about what comes back from that. But I think like anytime we're all coaches because like lacrosse helped us. Lacrosse like gave us something, and it's our way. Listen, we're not making millions of dollars here. We're just not. It's just straight up. Like,
knock a few zeros off that decimal point too.
Yeah, let's lot. Yeah, all of them, all the zeros. $7 per diem. What is it? I think like that kind of like vitriol that comes through, and the club teams and the poaching and all this stuff. It's like we're just trying to make our kids better. Let's talk about upcoming season, upcoming spring. How are you getting ready for that? I know we're like still a couple months away, and what's your process for that? And once you get guys in, like, do you practice varsity JV together? Like, how is your team structured and getting ready to go at the start of a season?
Yeah, we're lucky at our field. We have, for years we didn't have a turf field, so we played on field 13, which was nicknamed the Swamp. It was, I love practicing down there because you're kind of off on your own. But we have a multi-purpose turf now that has, so it's like a baseball diamond, call it 60 yards of, our field that overlaps with the baseball diamond, then a softball diamond. So we just go our whole program, at the same time, we'll take, oftentimes we'll have, varsity's got the full field for a, ride and clear situation or whatever it may be. Younger guys are down on the softball diamond, which ironically the pitcher circle is the same exact size as a crease. So we just put a net in there. So it's nice to have everybody kind of at the same time on site. Obviously we, our goalie coach works with all the goalies, our face-off coach works with all the face-off guys. So it's, keeps it, one big program, I think, which helps, culture wise. It's not like, you guys are practicing on some field that's, a mile away from the school or whatever. We're lucky with our situation with that turf, that it's like such a huge turf. It's way bigger than like a real field. You know what I mean? And we got to get creative with lines and stuff like that, but there's plenty of space to go, do different things with different groups. You can pull somebody off for shooting or footwork or whatever it may be.
Just going back to like talking about the league we're in, we're obviously league rivals, but you have a lot of non-league rivals that you kind of stuck with on your schedule over the past couple of years. You've kind of kept a similar non-conference schedule. Just talk about the relationship you have with those teams and coaches, and just kind of like the importance you think about playing those people, and what do you think it provides you both on the field and then also just like character-wise, relationship-wise? Like what do you get out of that?
Yeah, I think, when we pick our non-league schedule, it's, which, was just finished last week. I want to play guys that I respect, coaches that I respect, that I know their kids are going to be, well coached and do things the right way, and win or lose, that are going to make us a better team. That's always the goal to, obviously there's every program, has its ups and downs and things like that. But, regardless of what the score is, these well-coached teams, your team's going to get better, whether we're on the losing end or the winning end. We've been playing Minichog for years. Springfield connection, Kyle. Algonquin's been on our schedule since, before I was even coaching. That's the town right next door. That's always a competitive game. This year we picked up Falmouth, excited to play them. I've seen Rory Morris at all those meetings, and he seems like an awesome guy. So excited to, get a new team on our schedule. But yeah, for the most part, it's, we've played KP for years, Weston for the past couple of years, Algonquin and Minichog.
It's that pocket. You're not quite Eastern Mass, not kind of Western Mass, a little pocket that all you guys kind of reside in. You have that little area. It's like Mass does have those little regions. You guys don't really experience it because it's so small, but like just the little areas, and there's biases within those areas, and it's a big narrative throughout Mass lacrosse a little bit.
Well, we have North Massachusetts, which is where everyone lives in New Hampshire, and then there's Central New Hampshire where the natives live, and then Northern New Hampshire where no one lives. So it's very nuanced. Yeah, you see, I want to build it out. It's like a giant parfait with nothing in it. Coach, you're a defensive guy. I'm not, even though I kind of am, but I'm not. Give me your best defensive drill.
Ooh, best defensive drill. Biggest thing we work on all the time is, it's kind of like a football approach. A lot of guys, a lot of offensive guys, teach like, hey, as soon as the defender opens his hip, that's when you want to roll. We actually teach, you can open your hips if your chest stays square, like a defensive back. So I think hip fluidity, being able to open your hips without, closing your chest, you can stay chest to chest and still flip your hips. So, mandatory every single day. We're working on that with our drop steps. Another huge thing that it's boring, but, I think it's really effective is just the communication drill. We whatever set we're going to be seeing that week, whether it's, 1-4-1, whatever it may be, just getting cones out, getting younger guys out, moving, having no ball, but having, reacting to the goalie's voice, ball stops, ball stop right, ball stop left, whatever it may be. Sending fires that way where we can get, bumps and peels and really focus on, playing top side. That's the thing with defense. It's, there's a few things to work on, and you really need to be as close to mastering those as possible.
Springboarding off that, just going back to different defensive stuff like that and offensive stuff. Have you noticed any trends that either throughout the years of coaching, offense for your defense, that you see teams doing a lot more that they didn't used to, or something that happened a lot maybe when you started coaching that doesn't happen as much now. Like, I mean, I've only been in it for like 4 or 5 years, but I've seen a few things changes. I'm just curious if you've seen anything that has gone the wayside that you used to see a lot of, or the opposite of that.
Yeah, I feel like we used to see a lot more zone. I think maybe it's just the teams we played, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I feel like, specifically in our league, more teams ran zone where, not that they lived and died by it, but, off an end line out of a timeout type of thing. Not seeing that as much. I don't know necessarily the reason for that. I mean, maybe, it seems like more athlete. I mean, obviously you got your great programs that have, great players everywhere, but I think just the way the game's changed, it's really, look at the college game. It's a positionless game where, you got the Ivies that are, not subbing in transition and letting poles kind of handle the rock and, get shots on net. And it's kind of made the position better. I played the position, but, admittedly back in the day, it was, all right, maybe you're a bigger kid or maybe you can't shoot or whatever it may be. I think it's become, a position where more athletes are, sticking to it in the youth programs and it's become a more, not that it'll ever be glorified, but, I know with our program, we run like a diamond clear and let those guys hang out a bit. So it's not so much, like playing offensive line anymore. You get to have a little fun too.
I think what's interesting about defenders specifically now, like the change that I've seen in the last 10 years from when I stopped college coaching to starting high school coaching, the LSM is like cool now. Whereas like 10 years ago, no one wanted to be an LSM. It was like everyone thought it was an unskilled position and all that stuff. And like, I'm gonna be honest with you, I use LSM like an unskilled position because like usually I'd put the kid that's like really athletic but doesn't understand team defense. Like, you're an LSM, sorry. Until you can understand our team defense and know what tucking in is. Like, we have kids that just don't know what that is because they come as freshmen and I have to teach them all of that, which is why I was like, I'm not a defensive guy, but unfortunately I am with Javes. So it's, you know what it's like. You got to coach all aspects of the ball.
You said we weren't going to talk about it.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm bringing up your trauma. It's a shared experience. Do you find that to be true? Is that just me reading into it? Like, I remember I was coaching I was doing like a guest spot because like a coach didn't show up at a tournament for Inside Lacrosse. And they're like, we have all these kids here that are showcasing. We have no coach. I was like, I'll do it. So I'm coaching them and I tell the kid, I'm like, all right, he's really good. The kid's really good. I was like, hey, I need you to run LSM for this next game. He's like, I'm not running LSM. I don't know how to play LSM. I'm like, you're the best defender on the field. What do you mean you don't know how to play LSM? It's way easier. And he's like, no, like I don't want to do that. Like coaches aren't going to like me if I play LSM. I'm like, they'll love you more. What are you talking about? What's happening right now? And it's now kids are just like, oh, I want to be LSM, but only on the clear. And I'm like, what? Because they want the ball. And I realized that. And I was like, oh my God, you all think you're Scott Ratliff. Every single kid thinks they're Scott Ratliff now, which is great, but weird too. What's your take on that?
Well, I think it's cool. It's bringing pride back to the position. The way we do it, the way I do it at Hopkinton is over the years, we've never really had like a couple years ago, I take that back. We had like a true LSM, but just a kid that was a marathon kid. He could just take every shift and never get tired. What we did last year, the past couple of years, is kind of rotate through the position. So, identified our top, 4 or 5 kids and, all right, who's got legs? You're playing LSM. So last year, I'm sure, Owen, you saw, we had, essentially all 4 of our top poles playing the position. Sometimes it's matchup based too. I mean, we're if the team's got a, big physical midi, might put one of our, thicker kids up there. If it's more of a, jitterbug type of kid, then we'll, put that kid that can match up athletically. But, for me personally, it's more, and I laugh at it too. Sometimes we get freshmen in that are like, oh, I don't know how to play LSM. It's like, you still have the same stick. You're still,
it's literally easier. That's the thing that drives me nuts. It's like, this is way easier, dude. You stay with this guy.
They don't want to run. I don't know, maybe.
I mean, it's part of that. I think that's part of it, but with JV kids, that's what it is.
Yes.
With the varsity kids, they don't care. But like the JV kids, like, dude, like, anyone want to play LSM? I have varsity kids that come down for JV games and they're like, can I play LSM? I'm like, you're an attackman. No. And then like no one wants to play LSM. And in the fourth quarter of the game, I'm like, all right, go ahead. And then they just throw one big check and they laugh and then get a penalty and then we're not having a good time.
I can't speak to this because Westwood has been LSMU for a little bit since my tenure there. In time, we've been gracious enough to have a lot of good LSMs.
Yes.
In my years, both as a player and a coach. I don't want to. Yeah, I can't relate.
No, I mean, listen, I love Werner and just as much as anyone else.
Shout out to Matt Colley at Endicott. He had a great career there, and I was a lucky teammate. He assisted my only varsity goal as an LSM.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's nice.
good shout out to him. Good guy.
Hell of a kid too. Nice guy.
Yeah, great guy. Yeah.
I guess like kind of last bit. Any you guys want to talk any trash to each other, or we're good?
I did have in my notes. I'm career 7-3 for Stan.
Oh my god! I was joking. Yeah. You came with it. That's good.
But 2 years in 2019 and 2021, they beat us in the second game and then got the higher playoff seed because they had the head-to-head win and a better record after that second win, and that'll haunt me to this day. And that 2021 game, they came out and smacked us. They went up like 7-0 in like the first like 8 minutes of the first quarter, and we were playing from behind that whole game. They had a face-off who was tremendous. Their goalie was good. They had a scores. They were so good. I'll never forget that because we beat them in the first game, and then they just came out and just blew the doors off us in the first half, and we were playing catch-up all day. I'll never forget that game.
You guys got to play at night so I can come see it, because otherwise I'm coaching. Like I can't go to every game, but like I love listening to this kind of stuff. Like I love when there's history between teams, and it's new for me. You guys have lived it all, but I'm just like, oh yeah, this team doesn't like that team. That's fun. Like I love that.
Back to zone. That year you guys ran zone all against us every time. You know, we played you guys 3 times. We had a really good team. Only had a few losses, and 3 of them were to you guys. 2 in the regular season, 1 in the playoffs. So
you said you weren't going to make it. Remember when?
You opened the doors. You said, do you want to talk any trash? I took it. I wasn't going to start it myself.
I did. Coach, thank you so much for joining us. So much fun. Excited to connect Hopkinton and Hopkinton. I'm going to send you a hat.
I'll send you one back. Yeah.
All right. Sounds good. And we'll wear it and confuse the hell out of people. It'll be great. I'll wear it on the podcast. I promise. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it, guys.
And thanks again for listening to New England Lacrosse Journal's Chasing the Goal podcast. I'm Kyle Devitt. He's Owen Hart. We'll see you next time.